The storm raged outside, wind howling against the glass windows of the towering Grand Lux Hotel, one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. Inside, however, everything remained polished and pristine, at least on the surface. Beneath the glimmering chandeliers and marble floors, secrets brewed, hidden behind closed doors and whispered conversations, and no one knew that better than Adrian Cole. Adrian wasn't just any guest at the Grand Lux. He owned it. The billion-dollar empire was his, built from the ground up by his late father and expanded under his careful watch. But tonight, Adrian wasn't here as the wealthy CEO. No one in the hotel knew the truth. Dressed in a simple black uniform, with a name tag that read Adam, he had stepped into the role of an undercover worker, blending in among the hotel staff. He needed to know what was really happening in his empire when no one thought the boss was watching. There had been rumors, talk of corruption, employees being mistreated, money slipping through unseen cracks. Adrian wasn't a man who relied on reports alone. If there was something going on under his roof, he wanted to see it firsthand. And so, here he was, disguised as a night shift janitor, scrubbing floors and collecting trays from room service carts like any other employee. He didn't expect it to be easy, but what he didn't anticipate was her, Mia Carter. She wasn't like the others. While most employees either whispered behind his back or treated him like he didn't exist, Mia was different. She smiled at him, joked with him, even offered him her extra sandwich during a late shift. She worked harder than anyone, moving through the halls with quiet determination. Her uniform slightly oversized but clean. Her hair always tied back in a neat ponytail. There was something about her that made Adrian pause. Maybe it was the way she hummed softly to herself when she thought no one was watching, or how she defended a younger maid when a demanding guest snapped at her. She wasn't just another worker. She cared. Adrian found himself watching her more than he intended to, not just out of curiosity, but because she fascinated him. He had met countless people in his world, investors, models, socialites, people who only saw him for his money. But Mia? She didn't know who he was. To her, he was just Adam, the new janitor. And for the first time in years, Adrian found himself wanting to be seen as just that. But reality was never so simple. One evening, as he pushed a housekeeping cart down the hallway, he overheard two senior staff members whispering near the supply closet. Their voices were low, urgent. "You're sure no one's noticed?" one asked. "Positive," the other replied. "But we need to move fast. If the boss ever finds out..." Adrian's grip on the cart tightened. Find out what? Before he could listen further. The conversation was cut short by the sudden arrival of a guest, and the two employees hurried away. But the seed of suspicion had been planted. And then, there was Mia. The more time Adrian spent with her, the harder it became to ignore the feeling growing inside him. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something deeper, something dangerous. He knew he couldn't afford distractions. Not now, not when he was on the verge of uncovering the truth about his own hotel. But every time Mia smiled at him, every time she laughed at one of his dry jokes, every time their hands brushed while cleaning a table together, he felt himself slipping further into something he had no control over. And then, one night, everything changed. Adrian was finishing up his shift when he found Mia sitting alone in the staff lounge, her shoulders tense, her usually bright eyes clouded with worry. He hesitated before stepping closer. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" She looked up, surprised. Then, after a moment, she sighed. "It's nothing. Just long day." He could tell it was more than that. "You sure?" She hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "There's something going on in this hotel, and I don't think it's good." Adrian's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Mia bit her lip. I don't know all the details, but I've seen things, heard things. People taking money that isn't theirs. Staff being forced to do things that aren't part of their job. And if anyone speaks up, they're fired. No questions asked. She exhaled shakily. I don't know who to trust anymore. Adrian's mind raced. He had come here to investigate corruption, and now Mia, the one person he had let himself care about, was caught in the middle of it. He wanted to tell her the truth, to reassure her that she wasn't alone in this, but he couldn't. Not yet. So instead, he did the only thing he could. He reached out, gently covering her hand with his. You can trust me, he said softly. He said softly. Mia looked at him then, really looked at him. And for a brief moment, Adrian forgot about the lies, the deception, the weight of the secret he carried. But secrets never stayed buried for long. And soon, everything would come crashing down. Mia's words lingered in Adrian's mind long after they parted ways that night. Lying on the stiff mattress in the tiny staff dormitory, he stared at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. He had suspected corruption, but now he had proof, first-hand testimony from someone he trusted. Trusted? He caught himself on the thought. Trust wasn't something he gave easily, not in his world. But Mia, she was different. The next morning, Adrian resumed his role as Adam, the janitor, moving through the hotel as if he belonged. He paid closer attention now, watched the way certain managers avoided eye contact, how cash tips seemed to disappear from the housekeeping logs, how certain staff members got away with things others would be punished for. He wasn't just looking for problems anymore. He was seeing them everywhere. Mia remained his anchor. She worked tirelessly, barely taking breaks, always putting others before herself. But something was changing in her too. She was more guarded, her usual warmth flickering under the weight of whatever she had discovered. Adrian wanted to ask her more, but he knew he had to be careful. If she spoke too openly, she could be in danger. And the last thing he wanted was to see her hurt. One evening, while cleaning near the manager's office, Adrian overheard another hushed conversation. This time, it wasn't just whispers. It was an argument. We can't keep covering this up, a woman's voice said. It's getting riskier, a man scoffed. Are you backing out now? After everything we've done? Adrian pressed, himself against the wall, straining to hear. You don't understand, the woman hissed. Someone's been asking questions. I heard Mia Carter talking to someone. She's suspicious. Adrian's blood ran cold. The man cursed under his breath. Then take care of it. Make sure she stops asking questions. Adrian didn't wait to hear more. He took off down the hall, his mind racing. He needed to warn Mia. He didn't know who these people were or how deep the corruption ran, but one thing was clear. She was in danger. He found her in the laundry room, sorting fresh linens with quick, practiced movements. When she looked up and saw his expression, her brow furrowed. What's wrong? She asked. Adrian hesitated. He wasn't supposed to care this much. He wasn't supposed to get involved. But the thought of something happening to her made his chest tighten in a way he couldn't ignore. You need to be careful, he said quietly. People are talking about you. They know you've noticed something's off. Mia's hands stilled on the folded sheets. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, in a steady voice, she asked, How do you know that? Adrian hesitated. He couldn't tell her everything. Not yet. I just overheard, he said. Just trust me. Stay low for now. Mia studied him, her sharp gaze searching his face for something. Adrian felt exposed under her eyes, as if she could see right through him. But then, to his surprise, she nodded. I figured this was coming, she admitted. I just didn't think they'd act this fast." Adrian frowned. "Mia, what do you know?" she exhaled, running a hand through her ponytail. "More than I should. And if I tell you, you'll be in danger too." He stepped closer. "I can handle it." She let out a small, dry laugh. "You don't get it, Adam. This isn't just about stolen money or unfair treatment. There's something bigger happening here, and if the wrong people find out, we know." She swallowed hard. "People have been fired without warning. Some just disappeared. And I think it's all connected." Adrian's stomach turned. This was worse than he thought. Much worse. Before he could say anything. The door to the laundry room creaked open. Mia tensed instantly. A supervisor stepped in, eyes flicking between them. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone laced with suspicion. Adrian forced a casual stance, grabbing a stack of towels as if he had just been helping. "Just finishing up," he said evenly. The supervisor's gaze lingered on Mia before he nodded slowly. "Good. Get back to work." As soon as he left, Mia exhaled shakily. "See? They're watching." Adrian knew they had to move fast. He had to gather enough proof before things got out of hand. And he needed to protect Mia. But what he didn't know was that the deeper he dug, the more he was putting himself at risk. Because the people running this scheme weren't just stealing money. They were willing to do anything to keep their secrets buried. And soon, Adrian would realize, his disguise wouldn't protect him forever. The next few days passed in a blur of tension. Adrian kept his head down, but his mind was constantly racing. Every conversation he overheard, every suspicious glance from a manager, every nervous whisper between staff members, it all added up to something much bigger than simple theft. He couldn't prove it yet, but he had a sickening feeling that whatever was happening in his hotel went far beyond missing money. Mia had started avoiding him in public, and Adrian knew why. If anyone suspected they were working together, she would be the first to pay the price. But late at night, when the hotel hallways were quiet and the guests were asleep, they would find stolen moments to piece together what they knew. And the more they uncovered, the clearer the picture became. The Grand Lux wasn't just dealing with corruption. Some of the higher-ups were involved in a full-scale fraud operation. Fake invoices, unauthorized transfers, and hush money being paid to keep certain employees silent. And those who didn't stay silent, they were either fired or simply disappeared. Then, everything unraveled. It happened one night when Adrian was gathering evidence. He had managed to sneak into the assistant manager's office and was flipping through files when he heard the door creak open. He turned too late. A sharp voice cut through the air. "Caught you." Adrian froze. The hotel's general manager, a man named Dawson, stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. But his eyes were filled with something cold and dangerous. "Adam, is it?" Dawson said, stepping inside and shutting the door behind him. "Funny. I don't remember hiring you." Adrian knew there was no point in pretending. Dawson had figured it out. "Why don't you tell me who you really are?" the manager continued, walking slowly toward him. Adrian held his ground. "You already know." Dawson smirked. "Ah, so the little janitor is actually Adrian Cole, the billionaire, himself." He let out a slow chuckle. "I have to admit, I didn't see that coming." Adrian clenched his fists. "You've been stealing from me, from this hotel, and worse than that, you've been hurting people to cover it up." Dawson tilted his head, as if unimpressed. "And? What are you going to do about it? Call the police? You have no proof." Adrian lifted his phone, the screen still glowing. "I recorded everything." For the first time, Dawson's smirk faltered. But then, in a flash, he lunged. Adrian barely dodged the attack, the phone slipping from his grasp. Dawson moved fast, faster than Adrian expected, slamming him against the desk. "You don't know what you're messing with," he snarled. A sudden sound interrupted them, a door bursting open. Mia. Her eyes widened at the scene in front of her, but she didn't hesitate. She grabbed a heavy paperweight from the desk and swung it hard against Dawson's arm. He yelped, stumbling back just long enough for Adrian to break free and grab his phone. "We need to go, now," Mia urged. Together they ran. Dawson shouted after them, but they didn't stop. They tore through the hallways, past stunned employees, past oblivious guests sipping cocktails in the lobby. Adrian didn't stop running until they were outside, breathing in the cold night. Seconds later, sirens filled the street. Adrian turned to Mia, who was gasping for breath. "You called them," she nodded. "The moment I realized something was wrong." Relief flooded through him. The police stormed in, and within minutes, Dawson and his accomplices were being led out in handcuffs. It was over. As the chaos settled, Mia turned to Adrian. "So, what happens now?" Adrian studied her, realizing just how much she had risked for him. For the truth. He had come here to find corruption, but he had found something else entirely. He had found her. "I make things right," he said softly. "For the hotel. For the employees. And, if you'll let me, for you." Mia searched his face, a small, knowing smile playing at her lips. "You're not a very good janitor, you know." Adrian chuckled. "No, but maybe I can be something else." For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just Adrian Cole, the billionaire. He wasn't just Adam, the janitor. He was a man who had found something worth fighting for. And as he reached for Mia's hand, he knew that she, was the real beginning of something new.